Hi, if you want to watch exclusive content with hot girls that you won't watch on YouTube, namely where Naruto roasts Kushina and Mikoto and many other hot girls without restrictions, then visit my Boosty channel at the link in the description. Have you heard of Uzumaki? Who is this? One crazy guy. Crazy? What do you mean? You don't know? He's strange and sometimes says creepy things. Yes. My mother forbids me to even go near him. Wait. What do you mean, strange? Crazy? Yeah. Why isn't he being treated? Why is he walking freely? They say that even the Hokage is afraid of him. Don't talk nonsense. The Hokage isn't afraid of anything. And him, yes. Is it really that weird? Yes. The only thing scarier than that is salty cookies. And says strange and creepy things? Is he kidding? No, he's serious. Check it yourself. No, you can't. My parents will get angry. They will. And he will also eat you. He's not a barabashka to eat. But adults say he's a monster. Creepy, crazy, and also a monster. Haha. A horror story about a strange and very scary Naruto Uzumaki was circulating among children all over Konoha, who, in general, had nothing to be afraid of. But you know children? And there is no horror story more terrifying and strange than the fable about crazy Naruto, who, however, really seemed to be not from this reality. Perhaps this is the work of the fox, who, due to the weakness of the seal, took to causing nightmares to the Jinchuriki, or maybe this is the consequences of meeting Shinigami, who clearly does not have the appearance of kind Uncle Moidator, but undoubtedly, also professionally breaks the fragile child's psyche. But one way or another, the unfortunate Uzumaki sees what is not there. Mutters strange things under his breath and says illogical, and sometimes chilling things. And there would be no complaints about the boy, but he grows up in Konoha, beloved by all of us, where the method of treating the affect of drinking tea with the god of death was not invented, and their own crazy people were not sent abroad to straighten out their brains. And this did not affect the performance of military duty, so, after hesitating, and listening to the advice of elders and Danzo, including, having received an overdose of caffeine and nicotine, Sarutobi Hiruzen gave the go-ahead for Naruto's crusade to the academy. Naruto, what is the difference between a chunin and a jonin? How are a kunai and a sloth similar? Of course, Uzumaki's head was a mess of his fantasies, scraps of Shinigami memory and Kyuubi knowledge, and his parents, and it was so rich that it was impossible to fish out anything useful from all this, and new knowledge evaporated without ever reaching the brain. And it's not about stupidity. No, Naruto is a smart boy in general, but, as has been said a million times, strange. Naturally, he did not shine in his studies, he never made friends, but he gave birth to a whole bunch of rumors from the axiom, Naruto is strange, to such insanity as the rumor that this same blonde eats babies for dinner. Children. But Naruto is really sympathetic and honest. True, his reputation and the strength of the local grannies, who are clearly suitable for wrestlers, do not allow him to demonstrate good character traits. But Iruka-sensei, after bickering with the third and completely ignoring Uzumaki, saw a normal child in the latter and began to help and support him. Well, Naruto, the exam involves creating clones. Why are you silent? Show your skills. And create similar clones? Living as if in his own world, our blonde could not help but push away his peers, who, on the one hand, wanted to get to know him, but on the other, were afraid of the monster. It was for this reason that no one was going to pat the boy on the shoulder or calm him down when Uzumaki did not receive a protector. Although Naruto himself did not experience much grief, either not understanding what had happened, or showing miracles of optimism, or knowing what would happen in the future. It was not for nothing that he saw Shinigami, so to speak, practically the god of time, in reality. But it is difficult to say for sure. Why are you smiling like that? Aren't you worried about failing your exam? I'm sorry, I couldn't help you anyway. This is all for you, not because I'm such a bad teacher. I'm not worried. Iruka-sensei, because the game will start soon. What game? Play tag. I'll be the white rabbit. But despite everything, somehow, Uzumaki managed to get out of the mess with the scroll. As he said, it was a game of catch-up. And once again Iruka-sensei shook his head, surprised and even a little afraid of Naruto's ability to predict events. Intuition, apparently, is highly developed. And the blonde managed to learn the Class B technique, Shadow Clone, in such a short time. Minato's genes? Quite possible. Team number 7. Uzumaki Naruto, Haruno Sakura and Uchiha Sasuke. Why am I on a team with Naruto? At least with Sasuke-kun. Don't shout. Are you telling me what to do? No, you're just scaring them. Whom? There. There's no one there. Stop lying. There are. You just don't see them. But they are there. You're strange. By the way, everyone breathed a sigh of relief when they found out that Uzumaki was not on their team. Sakura was afraid of Naruto, but she quickly restored her stamina just by thinking about the fact that she and Sasuke-kun were on the same team. And Uchiha? He didn't care about his comrades, and in general he would have preferred to work alone, without ballast. In addition, it was a shock to everyone that the local idiot suddenly became a shinobi, even though he failed the exam miserably. Interesting, isn't it? But nevertheless, the forehead protector adorns the blonde, who is currently muttering something under his breath, as always. And the audience was becoming more and more deserted, as the newly minted genin almost galloped out of the boring walls of the academy. But someone will have to return to the textbooks again when his former classmates will kill and try not to become an anatomy manual. Anyone would choose the path of a shinobi, right? So, only Team 7 remains, still waiting for their sensei, who, in fact, can't tear himself away from reading a brand new Arrow novel by one of the Sannin, fortunately, not Orochimaru, although his tomes would become popular in certain circles and has no intention of coming on time. All the teams have already left, Sakura grumbled quietly, glancing at her watch every now and then. Why is only our sensei late? Catching Uzumaki's heavy gaze, Haruno frowned, questioningly. Well, she didn't like Naruto, she didn't like him. If you look at your watch too often, you'll stop time forever, the blonde nodded to himself. Cover it with a bandage, and time will go faster, it won't be offended by your intent gaze. What? Was all the girl could say before Naruto went back into himself. He's weird, he's definitely nuts, Haruno decided, looking askance at the source of all the horror stories. Why am I on his team? I'd agree to be with anyone, but not Naruto. It's good that Sasuke-kun is here. With a quiet creak, the future tumbled into the auditorium, looking around with a nonchalant expression and saying, Oh, this is Team 7? Am I right? Naruto and them. The weather was pleasant, with clouds and stuffiness, foreshadowing a thunderstorm with downpour and lightning, as it should be. I just wanted to lie on the grass and sip juice, but no, meeting the sensei. Although Kakashi would have preferred to sit in the shade, sip something a little stronger, and enjoy the wonderful intrigues of his fellow countryman's brand new erotic novel. But what can you do if the third himself sat some youngsters on the Jounin's hump? It seems that this time he is forced to work by the last of the Uchiha of Konoha, the best student of the academy, and a hooligan. And the latter is the son of Minato-sensei. Hatake had never even encountered the restless bandit before. Perhaps he hid so well, but they say that the boy is strange. And Sarutobi Hiruzen only shows off his false teeth when it comes to finding out the reasons for the boy's oddities, and in general the soundness of the idea of introducing Naruto to the work of a shinobi. Where is the reason? Where is the common sense? But yes, where is it written that a shinobi must be mentally healthy? That's it. Oh, this is Team 7? Am I right? A smile, an eye examines the three graduates. Could it really be Uchiha Sasuke and Naruto Namikaze, Uzumaki? Two headaches at once. Is the third one taking revenge for something? Not at all, no complaints. Yes, you must admit, it's a real pain in the ass. Yes, the pink-haired girl responded pleasantly and bowed slightly. Decided to make a good impression? Okay, follow me. Kakashi turned around and stomped towards the exit of the academy. It seemed that the workers had planted trees and bushes on the roof of the botanical garden a week earlier. Just the thing for a wonderful pastime. The girl admired the idea of the garden owner, while Sasuke only chuckled, and Naruto, it seemed, did not notice anything at all, continuing to mumble something under his breath. First, introduce yourself and tell us something about yourself. Hatake started his chorus, recalling all the students who had failed the test. Was he really going to send 3 more egoists back to the academy this time? What is there to tell? Sakura frowned, settling closer to Sasuke and further away from Naruto. Leaning on the railing, Kakashi spread his hands. Well, what do you like? What do you dislike? Who do you want to become in the future? Your hobbies and so on. Since the girl's stream of questions did not subside, the Jounin had to be the first to share the meager information, secretly cherishing the thought of reading. There was nothing surprising in the fact that Uchiha was silent, but Kakashi could not even think that the son of Kushina, the noisy wife of the sensei, would be quieter than water and lower than grass. And while Haruno shared her teenage crushes, the man watched the boy, sprawled on the steps, openly dozing in the modest rays of the hazy sun. I don't really have a dream, but rather a goal, to revive my clan and kill one person. While Sakura admired the brunette's coolness, Naruto perked up. He raised his head, looking at the young Avenger for a minute, as if assessing his strength and the truth of his words, and then smiled sincerely. And although under normal circumstances the smile would not have caused any emotions, now it froze even better than the Uchiha statement. As if Uzumaki sees to the root and knows both the past and the future. Your turn. The sensei broke the tense silence, pointing at the blonde. And again a soft smile on the genin's face. The name will be forgotten in any case, it will drown in history, even if it is the name of Hokage, Naruto began, not looking at Kakashi and his teammates. And over time, even favorite things turn into hateful ones, just as disgusting things become cute. What if you break a watch? Then time will not run, and tastes will not change, but isn't that sad? And if all this time you were pursuing not the truth, but a disguised lie? Were you wrong? Hatake, unlike Haruno, understanding the idea, caught Uzumaki's fleeting glance at the brunette. And I like talking to them. With whom? Sakura asked with a bit of hostility and a hint of fear, moving even further away from the blonde. He smiled madly and nodded at the empty air, after which he lay down on the steps again, not listening to the sensei's further warnings about the upcoming test. And no breakfast. I don't want you to turn inside out. The sensei said the last word, after which he looked at the quiet 3 with a mocking look in his eyes. Naive, did they really think that Konoha had the same trials as the mist? Having sent the children off to trudge home in a daze, Kakashi again thoughtfully looked at the unusually calm Naruto. And the boy really was strange. And what was the reason? That was yet to be found out. Sensei, Uzumaki suddenly stopped and turned to Hatake. Do you know the tale of the Jounin and time? Having met only bewilderment, Naruto smiled. Because the Jounin did not let go of the past, tormented and tortured it, time was offended. Do you know what happens when you offend time? And although the tone was friendly, there was something cold in the smile, and in the eyes an understanding of everything that was happening. Trouble. Sensei, have you ever offended time? Leaving Hatake in a daze, Uzumaki said goodbye and walked away with a brisk step. What the hell? Kakashi smiled nervously, looking down over the railing, watching Sakura and Sasuke, and then the restless blonde, who decided to run home. Fourth, what changed your son so much? On the benefits of hanging upside down. The test that Sasuke had been waiting for so long had begun. Did Sensei promise something out of the ordinary? Let's see. Watching from the foliage, Uchiha was just a little bit glad that the clingy Sakura hadn't tagged along with him, although she could have. Was he shy, or had fortune turned to face the favorite of the female part of the academy? But let's put these thoughts aside, because there was no girl in sight, but one unkempt pervert was very much so. Where did the information about the Jounin's love for erotic novels come from? Nothing is hidden from the eye of the all-seeing Sharingan, and in general, it can be seen from the cover. There is plenty of such pulp fiction on the bookstores, which is a reason to shudder at the prospect of learning from a pervert from our already unfortunate, and generally offended by the evil fate of the Uchiha. Although, right now, one blue-red impudent spot that had entered Sasuke's field of vision caught his eye. Are you busy? The source of the brunette's future troubles briefly inquired, throwing his dice nearby. And why, tell me, did Rikudo get this misunderstanding specifically about the Ice King of Konoha? Why didn't he go after Sakura? Or is he afraid of getting punched? The Uchiha was about to say a few kind words, but closed his mouth in time. Smart and well-mannered boys don't talk rudely. And they shouldn't talk to crazy people. Is Sasuke a good boy? And he thinks he is very good. Oh, lost soul. Don't stare at me, you'll have to sew up the hole yourself later, Uzumaki hinted too calmly, turning over onto his back. Is he trying to harass me on purpose, or is he really that much of an idiot? Our aristocrat frowned, but pulled himself together in time, remembering that he was not at a picnic, and stared with all his eyes at Kakashi, who was apparently happy with this arrangement, sitting on a stump and reading obscenities. And so an hour passed. So, are you going to take the bells? The Jounin asked sleepily, stretching and yawning sweetly. Was the book really getting to the boring part? I'm going! Now! With these thoughts, Uchiha threw a dozen kunai at Kakashi. You can't let your guard down, even if you're a Jounin! Missed, Naruto yawned nearby, dozing. Sasuke only chuckled. The throwing weapon hit the target. A moment later, the Uchiha realized that he was mistaken. There was a log in the place of the sensei. Where does he get it from? Uzumaki chuckled, turning back onto his stomach and crawling closer to the gaps in the foliage. And Sasuke only frowned at his teammate, not understanding how someone like him, a weakling, a bungler, could understand that Hatake would use substitution before him, a genius from the Uchiha clan, and without even turning around. What's taking you? Sasuke asked sullenly, looking around the perimeter in search of a new hiding place. At this time, Naruto sat up and stretched his arms and legs. Log. Do you see a woodcutter anywhere? And a firewood yard? No? Then where does it come from? The blonde explained with a smile, as if he were a child or a mentally retarded person. Maybe from another dimension? And again Uchiha wanted to make a facepalm gesture. Every shinobi can perform this technique. But Naruto is right about something. Where do the logs come from? Realizing that he was behaving just like Uzumaki, Sasuke threw his childish thoughts far away and focused on more important goals. So, why is Naruto grinning so strangely? Not good, oh not good. In general, when they grin with all their teeth, and so nasty, it clearly does not bode well for a meeting with Santa and the Easter Bunny over a cup of green tea. Although, drinking tea with non-existent shots is the prerogative of exclusively little girls and Uzumaki. Agree, seeing Sasuke riding a unicorn is the same as meeting death in a glamorous ultra-short dress with a small yapper in her purse. But at least seeing the second is not so explosive for the unfortunate gray matter. But we have nothing to lose, do we? Having changed his position, Sasuke was glad to be completely alone. But the joy was replaced by a silent scene in the form of Naruto crawling out into the light of day. A miracle happened. He didn't care. Oh no, he went in the opposite direction from the Jounin and the bells. The Uchiha looked out from the bushes with interest, noting with his peripheral vision a curious pink crown sticking out of the tree crown on the other side of the clearing. What was this crazy guy up to? Did he just want to leave? Or was he preparing some kind of plan? The brunette even began to burn himself out about the paranoid thoughts that had appeared regarding the orange boy, because it was simply unrealistic to tear himself away from contemplating this scene. So, he approached the pillars. What? The aristocrat was completely distorted when the boy, with the imperturbability of that very mountain, took and brewed ramen. And he, by any chance, hasn't gone blind? Kakashi is vigilant. However, his psyche was no less broken, and the template was torn apart by the antics of such a quiet-looking Naruto. But Hatake woke up in time and took the food from the genin, who was quite upset by this fact, and who immediately said to the jounin, "So, your conscience allows you to take food from the poor and wretched," and such a heavy sigh of disappointment at the end. The stunned jounin let the poor and wretched go free, after which he stood in a daze for 5 minutes until Sasuke threw shurikens and kunai at him again. "Little brat," Hatake said to no one in particular, again saving himself with the substitution technique. Annoyed by yet another blunder, Uchiha changed his location again, moving further away from the pond. Sensei had already disappeared, as had Haruno and Uzumaki. Where, by the way, had that psycho gone? The solution came at the same time as the girl's screams. There he was, hanging upside down, caught in a simple trap. Even those who weren't shinobi could do that. That's right, he was a fool. "You're a fool," Kakashi confirmed, appearing out of nowhere in front of Uzumaki. "To fall into such a simple trap!" Naruto nodded at Hatake, with a smile that seemed to be either superglued to his face or was his default function, to which Hatake sighed sadly. A shinobi must see the inside of the inside. Well said, but even the greats did not always adhere to this. You can't see your own insides. This is what distinguishes wise men from simpletons, the blonde put in his 2 cents, relaxing his whole body. Before the jounin could marvel at Naruto's words, he broke all the philosophical gooseberries. And hanging upside down is also useful. Firstly, the mind works better, and thirdly, it relaxes you. Without even trying to understand the hidden meaning of the phrases, Hatake rolled his eyes and disappeared in order to stir up the third genin on the team. And while the fight between the 2 Sharingan bearers lasted, Uzumaki basked in the sun. When it was time for the circus to leave, the timer rang. The dejected Sasuke and Sakura slapped against the pillars, but, finding no trace of Naruto, suddenly perked up. At least the girl did. Where did that crazy guy go? He's probably chatting to himself again somewhere in the forest. He didn't do anything. Lazybones. But then Haruno caught the eloquent look of the love of her life and blushed to the roots of her hair. She, too, was not distinguished by her ability to act. And while the genin were resting and anticipating further events, the jounin went to look for Uzumaki. Still here? Kakashi was amazed when he found Naruto still hanging on that tree. Can't you really free yourself? Why not? The genin was genuinely surprised. I told you that hanging your head is good for your brain activity. Well, snorted Hatake, fishing out a kunai in order to free the proud sufferer from the grip of the vile rope, when Naruto had already landed on his native Mother Earth, staggered a little, but remained standing. So, he could have done at least something useful instead of lazing around, the little parasite. Couldn't Sakura and Sasuke take the bells? Couldn't they unite? The blonde muttered under his breath, but the sensei took the question. If you know that the essence of the test is teamwork, then why didn't you contribute yourself? Hatake asked with a hint of irony, following the boy to the 2 genin. Sensei, so who will listen to me? The boy shrugged easily, breaking into a run with a laugh. Jonin had no choice but to once again raise his eyes to the sky, sigh heavily, understanding the reasonableness of the statement, and go to the troika in order to once again begin the session of horror stories. And Sasuke was already pretty fed up with Sakura's company, but Uzumaki, who flew into him at speed in a swallow pose, brought back the desire to communicate with Haruno, but only if Naruto right now falls into the abyss and no longer cripples his aristocratic and genius body. Under Sakura's screams, Naruto's laughter and Sasuke's grumbling, the furry polar animal came, leisurely waving its huge tail and baring its sharp snow-white teeth. What did you think? When there is, perhaps, the only person in the world who has ever had tea with Madam Old Woman with a scythe at your side, then troubles and misfortunes simply pour out like from a cornucopia, decorating the previously calm routine with rows of small and not so small failures. So what problems? Sasuke, who has already figured out the trick, can calmly answer. Huge and well roasted. So, the fact that my previous FIC, or rather, this one, was deleted has 2 huge advantages. I added it normally as a FIC upon request. I finally realized how cool it is to say fix in Word, smiley face. Of course, it's a pity that previous readers may not find the FIC, and it's also painful that the ratings and comments have disappeared, because it was so pleasing to my eyes in difficult moments of everyday life. About cats and dogs. Sakura, for whom this week was full of nothing but problems, was about to rebel when her team was assigned to find some ragged black cat. And first, this crazy idiot appeared on the team with her and her beloved Sasuke-kun. Then Kakashi-sensei scared her that she, the best student, would never become a kunoichi, and then they made her clean the toilets. And at this time, Uzumaki was shirking. But it was scary to hit him, he was creepy. The girl shivered, sitting on the bench and waiting for her teammates. However, it was all the fault of stupid old man third. Harmful old man. And it would have been better to leave her alone with Sasuke-kun. Yes, it would have been better. Uchiha appeared on the horizon, and along with this, Haruno's mood grew exponentially. Sasuke-kun, and she would be alone for some time. They say correctly that love works wonders. But even after all the attempts to seduce the obstinate brunette, Uchiha paid the bare minimum of attention to the screaming girl. And that was because her back was covered in something white. Turning his lazy gaze to the bench, Sasuke decided not to sit next to the fan. He realized that it had recently been painted. Holding back a malicious grin, the noble genius again closed himself in his thoughts about revenge and the fact that he would be proclaimed the coolest Uchiha, and in general. And the annoyed Sakura stopped spinning in place, noticing the bright face of their sensei, waddling towards the meeting place with a clear desire to forget about everything in his eyes. Sorry, I was helping the old librarian carry some books. Hatake waved him off in his usual manner, but noticing the absence of one element of their team, he asked, "Where's Naruto?" "He's wandering around somewhere, like always." The girl exhaled resentfully and quietly added, "I don't care whether this strange one will be here today or not." And the wait would have gone on forever, if something shaggy and with cat ears hadn't fallen out of the nearby bushes. Guess who could put on a dirty and moth-eaten fur coat in the summer? Of course, Naruto Uzumaki. He answered all the questions with a completely crazy smile, as it seemed to Haruno, as if he was mocking and generally planning dismemberment. "Sakura-chan, you can't catch cats with white. They like black," the blonde nodded like a dummy. And only now did Sakura realize that the bench was painted. With a wild scream, she jumped up, planning to run home and change her clothes, when Kakashi-sensei stopped her, wanting with all his heart to finish the mission as quickly as possible. The target was a cat belonging to some unimportant person, but the task could not be missed. Having handed out walkie-talkies to everyone, Hatake rushed off to look for the cat. "Sensei is a lazy ass." Haruno hung her head in pain. "Now we have to look for all sorts of cats. If only they had given us more interesting missions." "Don't worry, it's going to snow soon." Uzumaki appeared silently from behind, and as soon as the girl turned around, the blonde was gone. "Strange, crazy." Sakura shuddered. "How did the Hokage let him on missions? He does nothing and only scares. Idiot. And yet why did he put on a fur coat?" Sitting on a tree branch, waiting for the cat to appear, which, as Sasuke-kun reported, was running in that direction, Sakura dreamed, now she will catch the animal, and Sasuke will understand what a talented kunoichi she is. "Chernish won't come here." Haruno was so surprised that she almost fell into the nettle bushes. "Idiot! Why are you scaring me?" Uzumaki just shrugged, as if it was unintentional, and leaned against the trunk, sitting on a nearby branch. The girl irritably clicked her tongue and returned to watching the square. And soon the sensei's voice was heard from the radio, who stopped waiting for Sakura, telling her that the beast was moving towards the city. Haruno looked at the young fortune teller with fear, but knocked all thoughts about the paranormality of what was happening out of her head. The pink-haired girl was already starting to get angry. "Do you think I believe that you are such a cool clairvoyant?" Sakura decided to tease the boy. "Idiot. A crazy idiot, that's who you are. Why did you even put on a fur coat with cat ears?" And Naruto just smiled. "Dogs catch cats better than cats." Sakura started to have a nervous tic. He was making fun of her. There were rumors at the academy that her classmate was the incarnation of a demon and a Shinigami in one bottle. But did smart girls fall for that? No. And all the younger students believed it. They were afraid of the silent boy. But the older ones, as Kiba and Ino, who for some reason began to like such nonsense, told us, were waiting for Uzumaki at every corner in order to beat him up, but the blonde head disappeared as suddenly as he usually appeared. And anyway, why was Haruno Sakura's, head filled with all sorts of weirdos and fools? "How was Sasuke-kun?" "You're wearing a cat costume," the girl grumbled, jumping off the branch. The mission was still on, and Kakashi-sensei and Sasuke-kun were already in the village. "It's a dog." The local madman caught up with the pink-haired girl. "Not a cat." "Cat ears, genius." The girl shook her head in annoyance, tearing the hem of her dress from a treacherously prickly bush that decided to leave her, so beautiful and smart, here in the forest and make her the queen of nymphs. "Well, or Konoha's Eve. Dogs have different ears." Naruto sniffed, standing next to his teammate. She measured him with a look that burned holes even in titanium and just hissed, as if to say, a little child. In general, Haruno had nothing against blue-eyed blondes and children, but this detachment from this world irritated her. Nothing to do? Can't she speak clearly? She only fools around and scares children. And dogs always know where cats are. Now Chernish will come running here, smiled Uzumaki, wrapping himself in a fur coat. Cats love dogs. Idiot, Sakura decided, leaving the thorny bush to Ku alone. So, where's Konoha? Catch the cat, Kakashi-sensei commanded, like a forester with a chainsaw, suddenly jumping out from somewhere above, and before that, something dark flew right in front of Sakura's nose, which turned out to be the sought-after animal. Sasuke rushed after the teacher, but stopped abruptly, sullenly looking at how Uzumaki calmly stroked Blackie. Truly, Naruto is amazing. Sakura gritted her teeth, and Hatake happily pulled out his favorite book from his pouch. The girl did not know the contents of which, but she was sure that it was something serious, for example, the Code of Honor of the Shinobi. In the end, the cat was delivered to its owner, who began to cuddle his Hanamaru, and Sakura was once again convinced that Naruto was strange. For example, his logic that cats love dogs. But Hanamaru jumped right into Uzumaki's arms. Truly strange and even a little, just a little, scary. About all sorts of grandchildren, princes and cats with blue-green eyes. If you are full of strength and energy, then all that remains for you is to become the ruler of the entire village. And if all sorts of old men interfere with this, then there is nothing left to do but kill the impudent man who dared not to give the title to the most worthy. Today the assassination attempt ended in failure. The victim somehow found out about the attack plan and prepared thoroughly. And the fact that he, a small terrorist, stepped on the end of a stupidly long scarf, that was the machinations of the elders. Wandering through the streets, the failed Dark Lord cursed both his grandfather, that old fart, and Ebisu-sensei, who did not understand the genius of his student, and other completely random individuals who dared to catch the eye of the failed Hokage. And if death comes earlier than expected, will it be unfair? But how do you determine how much time a person has left? Death determines this. Does that mean it always comes on time? Someone nearby muttered under his breath, which greatly irritated Konohamaru, the honorable grandson of the third Hokage, also known only to himself and a couple of children, between us as the lord of the world and simply a genius shinobi. But it always interrupts plans, that means it comes too early, but it also determines the time of death, and it happens on time. And it turns out that death comes both on time and not on time at the same time, but… Shut up! Konohamaru turned around sharply, already pretty fed up with these monologues, but immediately turned pale. Behind him was that very crazy guy that all the local kids were talking about. This is a blonde guy who is always mumbling something. If you see him, run. And why should I run away from some guy? Put your pride down, we're talking about Naruto. And who is this? You don't know? This is a madman who kills anyone who talks to him. You're lying. We'll see when you meet him. But Konohamaru didn't believe these tales. Now the guy from the horror stories should smile madly and kill him. The boy closed his eyes, expecting anything from the psycho, but he only walked past, continuing to mutter under his breath. What kind of impudence is this? When fear faded into the background, imitating a hummock, pride, fueled by an inflated self-esteem that was not childish, spoke up. In the end, when the local cannibal showed his back to our brave hero, he, without thinking properly, decided to teach the impudent a lesson by introducing him to the back of the head. But let's be realistic. Of course, the unfortunate guy's ass will most likely suffer with the majestic soul of an equally majestic Sandal and even more so of an even more majestic Konohamaru. However, apparently, Murphy's Law decided to make its mark here too. The guy from the horror stories jumped at the last moment. Jumped high. And the venerable grandson flew forward with the grace of a shot-down sparrow. If you want to fly, then fear the sun, knew Icarus. The cannibal approached Konohamaru and smiled broadly. Help? Having measured the guy with an angry, contemptuous look, Sarutobi hit Naruto on the outstretched hand, stood up himself, showing that he did not need help. I can do it myself. The anger was boiling inside, but the honorable grandson did not want to hit Uzumaki. He was afraid. He dodged, although he did not see the blow, which means that the legends may be true. It's stupid to get angry, it's a waste of time, the monster responded to the rudeness with a slight smile. Do you want me to tell you a story? Konohamaru was stunned. A monster? A psychopath and a cannibal all rolled into one did not take offense and even offered some fairy tales. He was truly out of this world. After resisting, namely, insulting him a couple of times, Sarutobi saw not counter anger in his direction, but a soft smile from the blonde. But what can you do when they literally want to force you to listen to all sorts of stories? Nothing. That is why the boy gave in, and Uzumaki dragged him into the forest, where, presumably, they will find the gnawed bones of the great Lord of Darkness. Once upon a time there was a boy, Naruto began. Smiling mysteriously. Konohamaru didn't particularly like the boy's constant smiling, and his father's father was the king of a small but very close-knit country. He ruled well in the kingdom. There were butterflies and fluffy cats, walking on the roofs at night and catching glowing blue-green butterflies, which made the cat's eyes glow in the dark, as Uzumaki's story progressed. The clearing they were sitting on seemed to be transformed. Konohamaru could have sworn that a couple of times he saw glowing blue-green eyes of cats in the bushes, black as darkness. Cats roamed freely around the city where the king's castle was, but only pure-hearted people saw them. The cats appeared and then disappeared, and when they were gone, gray rats with empty black eyes appeared on the streets. And they were seen by everyone who had ever done a bad deed. The boy was narcissistic and wanted to take the king's throne, each time trying to defeat the old man. Konohamaru clearly saw how the prince challenged his grandfather to a duel, but lost every time, which made his heart hard. In the end, using poison, he killed the king, becoming the new ruler of the country. But he did not know how hard the fate of a leader is. The kingdom began to fall apart, and black cats with blue-green eyes disappeared from the streets, which were immediately filled with rats. At this point, Sarutobi shuddered and turned his gaze to the narrator, who, although smiling, was clearly either irritated or upset. Meanwhile, the story continued. The prince wrung his hands and asked the migratory birds for advice on what to do, but the birds did not hear him. Then the new ruler went in search of cats. The prince searched for a long time for pure hearts, accompanied by a pack of gray rats with empty black eyes, but could not find them in the entire kingdom, so he went to the neighboring ones, but on the way there was a thunderstorm. Escaping from it, the ruler broke into one of the village houses, where a commoner lived with her son. Having demanded to provide shelter and food, the prince fell asleep on the only bed, having eaten all the peasants' dinner. And the next day there was a frost. The prince could not go, there were no warm clothes, so he stayed with the girl. Then he noticed that the rats did not dare to step on the threshold, as if they were afraid of something. Having lived with the commoner for a few more days, the prince fell in love with the girl. "Stop!" Konohamaru protested. "I can't stand sappy fairy tales for girls." And the boy wanted to say another word, but seeing Naruto's gaze and the smile that had become frightening, he swallowed quietly and fell silent. The feelings were mutual. But one day the girl's son went for a walk and fell ill with an unknown illness. The prince got scared and went into the snowstorm and frost to look for doctors, but quickly got tired and froze. Then, in the forest, between the trees, he noticed blue-green eyes watching him with inquisitiveness. It turned out that the very cats that catch butterflies live in this forest. They warned the prince and went with him to help the boy. And the rats disappeared, as if they had never been. The prince went into the house of his beloved girl, and was dumbfounded. Everywhere he looked, there were black cats with glowing eyes. They were here from the beginning, but the young ruler did not notice this. His heart was black. They cured the boy, and the ruler went home with his bride and son, and their cats were already wandering around the capital catching gray rats, cleansing hearts. The prince realized that he was an idiot. However, he remained an idiot. Uzumaki shrugged. And troubles followed the prince to the end of his life. The end. What? Sarutobi frowned. I didn't understand anything. Naruto just smiled. And how can you understand that? Veli. Konohamaru just sighed in frustration, and then went home to apologize to his grandfather, not noticing the piercing blue-green eyes that were looking at him with curiosity from the foliage of the tree under which Naruto was still sitting. See you tomorrow. The boy shouted and started running. Because it was already getting dark, his parents were probably worried. See you. Naruto waved and looked up. Want a scratch behind your ear? A contented rumbling sound was heard from above. I confess I haven't posted for a long time. Probably the hardest FIC for me, since I'm a perfectionist. I'm constantly editing something, and sometimes even deleting a chapter. It was a good idea to make the fifth a collection of short stories on one topic. 3. I hope it didn't turn out too confusing and stupid. I make up the tales myself, I confess, they are banal and incomprehensible, but if you want, I can decipher this brainchild of Symbolism X. However, the metaphors here are the most trivial. I promised to post more, the day before yesterday, but because of a family scandal and a sudden history test, I delayed it. Forgive me, the sinner! And finally, I stand in Dejiza before the readers, those who read my other fanfic. How to Sell Konoha. A Guide for Dummies. Forgive me, I will not write a continuation soon, because I am editing the existing chapters, starting with the first one, because my mania for improving everything does not let me sleep at night. When I finish, I will post the rewritten chapters. I will write what has changed, so that you do not strain yourself by rereading, and new ones. Minutes when Death plans his work schedule in advance. And again cats. Sakura, of course, loved these undoubtedly useful animals since she was very afraid of rats, although she did not want to admit it, but it seemed that cleaning toilets and catching cats was the only thing their team was capable of, according to the harmful old man third. And how could she, a beauty and a smart girl, and Sasuke, the unsurpassed Uchiha, the ideal, vegetate on these ridiculously unnecessary missions? Of course, the cleanliness of the toilet seat is important, perhaps, and it is a pity for the missing pets, but less useful people for society can be useful for this. For example, Ino, Shikamaru and Shuji. Their missions are more challenging. Ino told me about how they caught bandits. Their sensei is not so lazy. Sasuke-kun. Good morning. The girl was glad to see the brunette so quickly. It was better than standing with Naruto and listening to his muttering. Even if it was delirious, but, frankly speaking, very curious. Just don't tell anyone. Having adjusted her shock of cherry petal-colored hair, the girl checked the bench for any wet paint that had so insidiously ruined all the fun. But, not finding what she was looking for, she calmly sat down, expecting Sasuke to plop down next to her. But, as everyone in Konoha knows, Naruto is more likely to express himself clearly and to the point than the Uchiha to share the bench with someone. And again, this blonde was late. Haruno sincerely hoped that this was a mistake and that Uzumaki would be excluded from their team. But this did not happen. Probably the third's tricks. Naruto. You're late as always. Even Kakashi-sensei is faster than you. We have missions, not kindergarten. Sakura flared up when a blonde head appeared on the horizon. Naruto gave everyone present a smile, and after Haruno's words, he tilted his head to the side and shrugged. These are all dirty insinuations. Choking with indignation, therefore missing the meaning of the phrase and its clarity, which, as was said earlier, was definitely not typical of such an unusual person as Naruto Uzumaki, Sakura flared up with righteous anger again. Do you even look at your watch? Do you know what time is? If you look at the clock too often, time will be offended. And if time is offended, then it is absolutely not good. There will definitely be troubles. And the clock always lies. How can you measure what is not there? With what is? Somehow it is illogical. Naruto nodded to himself again, and seeing Sakura's face, he shrugged. Do you feel that time is slowing down and then speeding up? You tried to pass the time. But it is not passing. That is where all the problems come from. The girl felt a sympathetic look on her, which belonged to Sasuke. Was Naruto brainwashing him with his delusional rantings? However, it doesn't matter. The point is to catch a cat again. The daimyo's wife's cat. And how did the animal end up in Konoha? A mystery of global scale. Where's your cat-dog costume? Haruno asked mockingly when Kakashi disappeared somewhere and Sasuke chose to run 20 meters to the right of Uzumaki and Sakura. It's useless to catch cats. Naruto shook his blonde head. A cat is a cat, so that it can disappear and appear. The brown carcass of the unfortunate animal flashed ahead, and the genin picked up the pace. This time they had to do everything faster. The mistress was waiting. Sakura gritted her teeth. Again these small missions, no training, no battles. Boring. Already planning to direct all her anger at Naruto for his latest stupidity, the girl turned to him, but saw only emptiness. He ran away again. He's shirking. Haruno flared up, biting her lips in annoyance. Sasuke chuckled, what else to expect from Uzumaki? Why am I shirking? If there is nothing to do, then it is impossible to shirk, was heard from the right of the Uchiha so suddenly for Sasuke himself that he almost got tangled up in his legs, but he stood his ground. Two pairs of eyes stared at the lazy man, extremely indignantly and with obvious notes of irritation, but all phrases and even snorts stuck in his throat. Uzumaki was holding in his hands the very cat that belonged to the wife of the ruler of the Land of Fire, which they had been trying to catch up with for a long time. Purely on autopilot, continuing to run, the two genin did not notice the ditch in front of them, stumbled, and flew into the bushes, fortunately, not thorns. And Naruto jumped onto the lower branch of the tree, under which Sakura and Sasuke were lying, like a cat, and the animal in his hands lay humbly, arrogantly staring into the faces of the stunned genin, and with his whole appearance showing his gloating. Nasty cat. But just as Haruno was glad that the mission had once again ended in victory, and even though Uzumaki had gnawed the winnings, even though the dress was in green spots from the grass, this running around had ended by lunchtime, and that was the main thing. The cat, as if frightened by something, hissed, began to break free from the blonde's embrace, twisted away, and jumped into the tall grass. H. The girl grabbed her head, unable to understand that Naruto was not the king and god of cats. But Tora was scared of something. It was quiet around, the birds were chirping, and the wind was ruffling the treetops. And this somewhat aggravated the situation. If cats usually cling to Uzumaki, then why did the favorite of the first woman of the country react like that this time? Sakura shifted her gaze from the bushes to the blonde and extremely strange teammate, frozen like a statue. Naruto? Sasuke also noticed this absent gaze and creepy smile. The wind intensified. It ruffled the treetops, dropped lower, rushed through the bushes, crawled under clothes, causing goosebumps. The singing of birds receded into the background. For a minute the forest became damn scary, with a bit of mysticism, the kind they describe in horror stories. Sakura was afraid to move, to blink, as if she did this, she would die. Or something so terrible would happen that the Shinigami would seem like a very friendly creature. Sasuke swallowed nervously. This only got to him in nightmares, when his brain again stirred up memories of Itachi's genjutsu, of that night. And then he woke up in a cold sweat and trembled for a long time, since the impressions and emotions did not want to dull. And then everything returned to normal. Sakura, standing still won't stop time, Uzumaki said with his usual smile, jumping down and disappearing right away. However, it didn't matter. He muttered something, didn't he? The girl whispered, still not moving. She heard something in this wind, something frightening, ominous, like when fortune tellers predict death. No, like when you yourself feel that soon someone close to you may be in serious danger. It is intuition, squeezing the throat, terrible dreams, and worry about whether everything is okay with a loved one when he is on the road. All together in one wind. Uchiha clearly realized that there was a familiar spirit of death in this wind. And Naruto, standing calmly, breathing deeply, with this smile, as if nothing was happening to him. No, the absent look was actually thoughtful, and the smile was a dream under the oppressive aura of death. And it was really creepy. Having driven away the obsession, Sasuke chuckled at Sakura's question, showing indifference with his whole appearance, jumped onto the branches, and ran after the cat. It's all imagination, insomnia and irritation from monotonous simple missions. And there is nothing scary or mystical in Uzumaki. He is not familiar with death, and the wind was ordinary. It's easier that way. Haruno watched Uchiha with mixed feelings, looked around hesitantly, thinking which way to go, bit her lip. This idiot Naruto couldn't be so creepy. Imagination. If Sasuke-kun didn't feel anything, then it was her, Sakura's, problem. She should visit the melanin. It seemed that the cucumber diet was causing consequences in the form of hallucinations. But there was definitely something. These feelings and emotions still remained, and everything inside was shaking. Rustling was heard from behind. If you think too much about death, you will become the living dead. What? Sakura turned around, but saw no one. Was that Naruto's voice? The girl laughed nervously, twirling a strand of hair around her finger. I'm definitely hallucinating. And to prevent things from getting worse, Sakura tried to throw all the gloomy thoughts out of her head, occupying them with thoughts about the cat. While heading towards Konoha, perhaps, the animal would rush there. And after 5 minutes of wandering, Sasuke and Naruto literally fell out of the bushes on her, as if they had been rolling in the mud, scratched and in torn clothes, but with a cat in their hands. Toru was holding Sasuke, while Uzumaki was pressing him into the ground without an ounce of remorse on his shameless face. This idiot can't be creepy, Kuruno and Uchiha decided internally, glancing sideways at the detachedly friendly-looking Naruto. Conversations with emptiness. Ino hated going to the hospital. Doctors were always trying to take blood, and nurses were chasing her away, saying that patients were waiting and you were just getting in the way. But an even more important reason to dislike this place was the layout of the building itself. What a labyrinth! And so, having received a very deep wound on her knee as a result of walking someone's dogs, Yamanaka reluctantly trudged to the stronghold of Shinobi with neutral chakra and the habits of Ripper. If you just smear it with green paint, the pain will go away in about 5 days, not counting the future bruise, and the view of your beautiful legs will be spoiled. All that remains is to surrender to the maniac doctors. It was with such gloomy thoughts that Ino met the building with the cross. Does it hurt now? The medic inquired, removing her palms. The green glow went out, as did the burning. The blonde nodded, reluctantly acknowledging the usefulness of people of this profession, carefully slid off the couch and walked around. No scratches, no bruises, no pain. As if nothing had happened. Having thanked the woman, the girl went out into the deserted corridor, intending to pop into a couple of shops on the way home, so to speak, to compensate for all the torment, but fate had other plans. The corridors seemed to be closed, and Ino cut circles, passing by the same vase of geraniums. With a displeased hiss, cursing the architect 3 times, Yamanaka, seeing the stairs, rushed towards them. What floor is this? 3rd? 2nd? There were no people along the way, only voices could be heard somewhere in the distance. Probably in the wards, Ino thought, not really listening. Having gone down 1 floor, the girl pulled the door, but it didn't budge, apparently it was locked. It would have been reasonable to go back and start over, but that floor was already a pain in the ass, and the stairs were still going down. And again the same situation with the door. Cursing, Yamanaka went down even lower, where the stairs ended. Without reading the hieroglyphs above the doors, the girl entered a not very well-lit room. On the left-hand side there was a table with a pile of papers on it, and on numerous shelves there were vessels with various liquids gathering dust. Wincing from the strange smell, Ino slowly and quietly walked on, largely due to the silence pressing on her ears and this strange smell, which discouraged her from swearing. And gradually the silence was diluted by indistinct muttering. The room Ino found herself in was relatively small, and opposite the entrance there was another door. Carefully opening it, the blonde looked inside. A large hall, around a couch with something on them, and this something was covered with fabric. Morgue! Yamanaka realized with horror. Her legs didn't give way, but they became weak, not allowing her to move a single step. And the muttering became clearer. Soon, in the semi-darkness, her eyes caught the figure of a boy sitting right on the floor among the dead, mumbling something. Listening closely, the curious Barbara clearly felt that it was some kind of dialogue. Death is not life, life is not death, the elusively familiar boy shrugged. Do you think that the troubles ended there? Do you feel yourself? Do you exist? That means there are troubles. And if there are no troubles, then there are no you either. The blonde head, the way he spoke, could it really be Naruto? Ino swallowed, pressing herself against the wall, afraid to interrupt the dialogue with the void, but she did not stop eavesdropping. Of course, it had long been known that Uzumaki was very strange, not of this world, but usually he mumbled, but indistinctly, as if to himself. But now the atmosphere was frightening, like a horror story before bedtime. No more than you, Uzumaki continued, everyone here is strange. What isn't strange? What is right and what is wrong? And it's only you who thinks so. There was a smile in his voice. Naruto spoke as if there was an invisible interlocutor somewhere, who could be understood without words. The lights occasionally flickered. Uzumaki, despite the fact that he was talking to nothing, seemed less strange than usual. And this was expressed in the understandability of his muttering. There was a fog around the boy. Some kind of haze barely visible to the eye, in which human figures were occasionally discerned. Having thrown off the images that came to mind, Ino blinked, and the visions disappeared. Only the cold wind walking along the floor still brought thoughts of the otherworldly. As, incidentally, did his former classmate, talking to himself. "Why did you die?" Uzumaki drawled thoughtfully, and goosebumps ran down Ino's spine. It seemed that now the blonde would give an answer to this question, give an answer to the eternal topic of death. Her heart seemed to beat louder and faster, deafeningly and too fast. Afraid to move, the girl from the Yamanaka clan clung to the doorframe, even holding her breath in order to hear everything, but Naruto acted differently than the girl had thought. "You'll find out yourself," the blonde purred. "Right." And turned in the direction where Yamanaka was hiding, looking out impatiently. His heart skipped a couple of beats, and his eyes darkened. Ino only remembers that her legs carried her forward, not making out the road, and the intense gaze of blue eyes with a certain amount of mockery throughout the entire journey out seemed to drill into the back of the unwanted guest. And a smile that was strange for Naruto, not soft, but truly crazy. Yamanaka felt that she had opened the wrong door, had seen something she shouldn't have. But inside there was a firm conviction that when a certain time came, this secret would be revealed too. And even if not completely, this would certainly be enough. Already standing at the counter with low-calorie sweets, Ino still couldn't get over what she had seen and heard. Thoughts swarmed in her head, and a chill ran down her spine. "The morgue is not a place where you can go alive without an invitation," sounded in her ear. Horrified, Ino raised her head towards the sound, but saw the seller with a shining smile. Asking again in a trembling voice, the girl received an answer. "I ask, maybe I can advise you something?" Having muttered the order in confusion, Ino took the bag and quickly left, leaving the seller standing there with a puzzled look. And already being at home, having thrown all thoughts of the dead and Naruto out of her head, she, having read a couple of books in order to wait for the evening, having wished everyone good night, went to bed, although sleep did not come. All sorts of nonsense and horrors crept into her head until fatigue took its toll. Naruto, sitting on the roof of her house, waited until all the lights in the windows went out, raised his head to the sky. The sun was hiding behind the horizon, a cool wind ruffled his clothes and hair. Summer nights are truly beautiful. All sounds faded away. In other houses people also went to bed. The noisy daytime life gave way to a dangerous night life. And again the wind rose, and in its rustling there was a quiet, barely audible whisper. "Are you afraid?" "She'll forget everything," Uzumaki stretched, looking around at the bar signs burning in the distance. What seems strange and abnormal to a person is usually ignored or forgotten. People don't like the inexplicable and the unknown. The rustling sound was repeated. "As you say." Naruto walked along the edge of the roof and jumped down, disappearing into the shadows. Sometimes you can be normal, but only alone with this rustling whisper. And again, he will have to carry out his orders. At the same time, a figure of a man, most likely a boy, appeared in the cemetery. And a quiet muttering was carried by the wind through all the nooks and crannies of the territory of ghosts of the past. And random passers-by, having only heard it, cringed and quickly ran away. Only boys who decided to prove their courage watched in horror as the shadow of a man walked between the graves, as if guarding them. And then a new village horror story about the guardian of the cemetery was born. But some assumed that it was Naruto Uzumaki. The strange blonde answered direct and hidden questions regarding communication with the dead with a soft smile. "It's all nonsense. Naruto and cemeteries? It can't be." "Don't be a fool," Ino laughed when the kids looked into her shop to tell a new story. But something inside told her that legends are not just made up. There is always some truth in them, and in some there is less lie than truth. "What am I thinking about?" The girl shook her head, adjusting her tail so that Sasuke could notice her beauty. "And why think about all sorts of weirdos and freaks? In principle, I'm taking a risk by posting this chapter. Many people were in a positive mood, and here I am and I posted something about death and morgues. In general, the atmosphere is created with monstrous efforts. Well, you probably forgot that Sakura initially noted that Ino was interested in all sorts of mystical things with a bitter side dash. I'm also having fun. I wrote a FIC about a girl who gets to Eno, http://ficbook.net/readfic/833843. Definitely not MC, no influence on canon and no superpowers. Life was a failure. At 19, a cashier with no desire to go to college, and the boss is a shrew in perpetual PMS. But as soon as I opened my eyes in another place, took the place of a girl named Eno, troubles poured out like from a cornucopia. There are more and more time travelers. My brother ends up in the clutches of some crazy experimenter, the village elite is up to something, and they start to suspect, and the only thing I can do professionally is steal sweets from stores. Crown Princess. Hinata felt like an odd one out in the clan. Her entire family was strong, the Byakugan could compete with the Sharingan, all members of her family were masters of taijutsu. The Hyuga were the elite of Konoha, and she was unworthy of the title of princess of the clan. Hinata trained long and hard, but Hanabi was more talented in everything. A blow. The training dummy was covered in dents and furrows from kunai, but that was not enough. She was weak in body and spirit in her own opinion. A hindrance to everyone. A blow. A lump rose in her throat, she could not hold back unwanted tears, and Hinata, leaning her back against the dummy, slid to the floor, hugging her thin knees with her hands. Biting her lip, the girl inhaled convulsively. Her father was ashamed of her. Her brother Niji hated her, and her own sister despised her. Should she continue training if there is no result? Maybe she will simply become a carrier of the Hyuga genes? Hinata shook her head. Where did such thoughts come from? After all, she is very far from her clanmates. A black sheep, defective. Superfluous. Then why are you beating your fists until they bleed? A familiar voice. Hinata shuddered, jumped away from the target, looked at the uninvited guest and almost coughed. Naruto was sitting on the training dummy, tossing 2 apples from hand to hand. You're strange. Are you afraid of troubles? How did you get here, Naruto-kun? Hinata wanted to ask, but hesitated, blushing. How did he get past the guards? How did the Byakugan not see him? Do you see everything yourself? Do you see what you know, or do you know what you see? People are moles, they don't see a grain of sand in front of them. No troubles, no salvation. Not even themselves. Naruto smiled. He always smiles and never frowns. Blissful. Happy. But are people who show everyone their smile so happy? Hinata looked around warily, listened. There is no one. When she is at home, no one needs her. No one looks after her. She is definitely superfluous. Why do you eat? Just like that? You want something. They want something from you. And you are superfluous. You offend everyone. Hinata stared at her fingers. She had Kurenai-sensei, Kiba, and Shino, and she couldn't let them down. If she was weak on missions, she would become an easy target, and then the boys would have to risk themselves for her, so stupid and useless. She wanted to become strong like her father, and kind like her mother. That was her dream. But it just wasn't working out. Her training was wasted. And troubles are afraid of you. When you are not afraid of them, Uzumaki smiled wider. Hyuga raised her head, looking at Naruto with disbelief. He was encouraging her? Thank you. Hinata muttered timidly, looking down again. Naruto-kun. But he was gone. Nowhere. And only a light draft carried. Fight against troubles. The girl smiled to herself, and glanced sideways at the mannequin. 32 touches of heaven. Hayashi, leaning against the wall, unseen by Hinata, watched his daughter. She was very weak, she had no leadership qualities. Hanabi was more talented than her, but Hinata was unusually diligent. To train until her blisters were bloody and, despite the pain, to continue. When did she become strong in spirit? She would never become the head of the clan, but as a warrior. Hyuga gave his firstborn a short, hard look and moved away from the wall. She's too far from that. But someday, maybe she'll live up to her lost hopes. After all, she has his blood in her. The princess will become a queen. A chuckle came from behind, but again there was no one there. Shaking his head, driving away the obsession, the clan leader decided to drink tea. He needed to think about the future of his firstborn more carefully. Genius and madman. Sometimes Shikamaru gave in to despondency. Only occasionally. He became a shinobi simply because his parents wanted him to, and he just went with the flow. Whether he would be a shinobi or not, who cares? Either way, he would have to work. But he was lazy. What did he really want? Just to look at the clouds or to do something important, to help someone, so that he wouldn't reproach himself for a useless life? But all this was so problematic. Was it really impossible to know everything in advance? Isn't it boring to know the next day? Shikamaru slowly turned his head towards the familiar voice. The local weirdo, Naruto Uzumaki, was lying not far from him on the roof, hanging slightly, looking with interest at the passers-by below. But then there won't be any mistakes. No one will get hurt, Nara snapped, leaning back. Why do they always bother him? If you try to fix something yourself, you can cause trouble. Naruto continued to smile sincerely, like little children on holidays, having received a whole bag of candy. Shikamaru didn't want to admit that Uzumaki was partially right, but he didn't want to argue either. It was too problematic, and the day was so nice. It was. Although no, even then the despondency was eating away at him. If you constantly think about the next day, you'll wake up an old man, Naruto laughed, as if making fun of his, Shikamaru's, problems. But then the weirdo's face smoothed out. Think for yourself. Do what won't bring troubles to others. Don't defend time. The reindeer herder raised himself up on his elbows, looking at the back of his former classmate, who had managed to move from his usual place and sit down on the edge of the roof right in front of Nara. Can you speak normally? Shikamaru asked skeptically, no longer hoping for anything. Talking to Naruto was an entertaining pastime, perhaps because madmen were always more interesting to the genius than ordinary people with their petty problems. In the heads of madmen there are whole new unexplored worlds. They have an illogical point of view and have their own opinion for every statement. They do not depend on other people's opinions, do not lie, do not burden you with problems. Who knows? The boy shook his head. Shikamaru chuckled. I think you're perfectly aware of yourself. The genin retorted, ignoring the clouds. At the moment, the blue-red spot in front of him was more interesting than the weather. But you yourself don't know much about Shikamaru. Gotcha. The genius noted contentedly. Uzumaki pleasantly surprises more and more often. And what can you say about Shikamaru Nara? The reindeer herder asked with an anticipatory smile. Naruto stood on the very edge, as if not noticing the height, and turned around sharply. Don't be afraid to choose. This is your life with your troubles. Without them it will be boring. And you will still be able to find a way out, right? He smiled sincerely, laughed without any malice. Hated by everyone, having become the hero of more than one horror story, he continued to be bright, like a child. Everyone else at his age had long since lost touch with childhood. Largely because of the life of a shinobi. He was feared and hated partly because of this serene look, because he smiled softly at any rudeness. He is strange and incomprehensible. And also misunderstood. Really? But these are my own problems. Naruto spread his hands, standing on the very edge. Mistakes are a part of life. And sometimes they are friends with a lucky chance. He waved his hand and jumped down. He was not there below, nor on the neighboring roofs. But Shikamaru was not surprised by this. This is all normal, as it should be. Naruto, who helps everyone but does not allow anyone to come to him, disappears, and his next interlocutor thinks how little he knows about Uzumaki. In the end, this is how Konoha's weirdo should be, an inconspicuous assistant and advisor, not asking for anything in return. How ironic to see such a phenomenon in a world where a mercenary is the most important job, where children are taught to kill from an early age. Shikamaru stretched out, basking in the sun. Yes, it was still so stressful to think about the future. And let him be a shinobi. But not one who kills, but one who saves innocent people, his comrades and the country. Protects the fragile peace. It is, of course, problematic, but worth it. Underscore. Well, yes. Phew. But at least I finished the second drabble, which gave me mental constipation. Ho ho, I was at the school of activism. And it was unforgettable. And I've finally mutated into a Hoovian. Where are you, Doctor Who and Merlin crossovers? I once came across a FIC where Ten and Rose ended up in Camelot, but the Doctor didn't believe in magic. And then Merlin appeared to the people. But I lost it. People, maybe you have something similar in mind? It's a pity that you can't set crossover parameters on Ficbook. It would make my life easier. Oh yeah, I have a sore throat. Sorry for the delay in the chapter. Ho. Note 5. Naruto gives advice. Part 1. The Kindest Man. The shinobi of the Land of Fire, without wincing, cut the traitor's throat with a kunai. The latter, making a gurgling sound, slipped out of Ryo's weakened grip and fell from the branches to the ground, sprawled in an unnatural position. The winner chuckled, casually wiping the kunai on the moss growing on the bark. They had once been friends, but the war had forced them to fight against each other. In this battle, it was clear from the start. The one who proved his composure and loyalty to his homeland would win. Chuji put the book aside. What could be worse than this plot? Couldn't they have solved the problems in a different way, without turning against each other? After all, wars were invented by idiots. That's right. Fools playing with other people's lives. Outside the window of Choji's room there was an old tree, on which birds had built nests. Every morning they started their song, waking the boy up several hours earlier than expected. But could he be angry with them? Thanks to them, he managed to do everything, and the trill delighted his ears every time. Choji treated his peculiar neighbors with love, leaving a treat on the windowsill, a handful of seeds, a pile of cereal, or a sliced apple. And the birds were not afraid of him at all. But now the winged ones flew away screaming. The reason for this was a shaggy boy in a shabby t-shirt and shorts, standing on the window frame. Choji could not help but know this eternally smiling face. Legends have always circulated about Naruto, and every junior schoolboy tried to bombard all the classmates of the strange Uzumaki with questions. But it's not about how famous Naruto is, it's about what he's actually doing on the second floor of a house located in a gated community. Almost anyone, if someone's life falls into his hands, will start playing with it. This is the very duty of a shinobi. Sacrifice others if the situation demands it. Sacrifice yourself if it is the commander's order. Wars in general are still those troubles. And even if time wants to carry horror, any person will simply plug his ears and close his eyes. Why would he do that? And then a small quarrel. Naruto jumped into the room silently, tilting his head to the right side, and bam! Trouble, war. After the end, everyone will forget again. And time has nothing to do with it. This is a selfish thought. Everyone thinks about themselves. Chuji even moved away from his former classmate. He had already intruded into his personal space. He frowned and shook his head. Not true. Not everyone thinks only about themselves. Uzumaki turned around, walked to the window, paced the room, stopped and bent down, touching the carpet with his palms. Those who suffer the most. And not giving Akimichi a chance to get a word in, he continued, lifting his feet off the floor. You keep other people's thoughts, secret mysteries, and no one knows about yours. And your grievances accumulate. And what will happen next? An explosion of troubles. The boy balanced on his hands, taking steps forward and back, carelessly swinging his legs and managing to whistle an obsessive melody. Chuji frowned, tilted his head to the side, and tried to understand what Uzumaki needed. They say he is the one who is going to die soon, Ino once said. However, now she doesn't think about mysticism at all. And this is very strange, because before she even chased Uzumaki to find out more about him. After all, no one knows where he lives exactly, or where his parents are, or who he is at all. Strange Naruto. And that's all. This was more than enough for everyone. Only a few kids were collecting a dossier on the Konoha Psycho. Maybe Ino was just tired of legends. After all, at this age, girls are interested in boys, and not in city horror stories. That won't happen, Akimichi argued uncertainly, fiddling with a bag of chips in his hands. He would never cause problems for his friends. And that's just you thinking, assured Naruto, swinging his right leg in time with his words. You close your mouth. You marinate evil, season it with other people's lifebloods. You close the lid tightly. And then fermentation occurs. What will happen if you don't loosen the lid? The lid will bulge, the boy answered reluctantly, remembering how his mother rolled up the jam jars. But nothing more. What if the glass is thin? You're not thick-skinned, heh? So what if he's not thick-skinned and vulnerable? Chuji simply can't dump all his problems on his comrade's shoulders. It would simply be unfair. Do you think that since you're big, you can withstand all the troubles? And what are the other straws? Naruto asked with a bit of sarcasm. It's unfair not to trust others. Is this mistrust? He just doesn't want to burden them. You think they just can't handle it all. Not true. It's better that he won't burden everyone, but he himself will be able to give advice to another, help solve a problem, or just listen. But others can't do that. They don't know how, haha. That's not the point. Maybe you'll try at least once? Naruto spread out on the carpet, folded himself, and turned over on his stomach. Friendship is when everyone gives the other part of their evil. Putting his head on his hands, the boy looked at Choji from under his brows and smiled. And taking on other people's troubles and not sharing your own is called something else. Stupidity. Choji is a fool. A big pillow for tears and beatings. A fool, he doesn't know anything about friendship. Pushing off the floor easily, Naruto jumped up and landed by the window. You need to trust others, otherwise rats will settle under your bed. What kind of rats Choji didn't know, just as he didn't know where Naruto had gone. But he was already sure that next time he would tell Shikamaru that he was very afraid of serious missions, when he would have to face death and betrayal. And Ino would refuse another conversation on the topic of Sasuke doesn't love me. After all, he also had the right to at least sometimes take a break from the life of a wet vest and a silent listener. At that moment, blue-green eyes flashed under the bed. Underscore 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 underscore. What the hell? Author, you're a lazy asshole. See. Hello everyone. I've been struggling with one subject and its teacher these long weeks. And after an exhausting struggle, I finally get an automatic. Hallelujah! But next week there are tons of tests, and I think it's better to post one drabble instead of two. At least I won't drag this out until February. Ho ho. What else can I say? Help revive the spirit, write a few lines. It's really nice after classes, already sitting in the trolley bus, to get on the internet and see your reviews. However, many of you are familiar with this feeling. Yes, I often do not answer comments, unless they are questions, but I wish everyone all the best. Thank you to all readers. See you soon, I hope. And a Merry December Christmas to everyone. P.S. I recently watched a strange anime style, and the main character, as a child, really reminds me of Naruto from this FIC. Well, almost. I recommend downloading Kuchiburanko to anyone interested in psychology, and who doesn't stop watching anime because of lousy drawing. It's a very specific work, but I enjoyed it. It's a pity that there are so few episodes. Titmouse whispered that there is / will be a drama. I'll wait and look. Note 6. Naruto can be even weirder than usual. People of the time, a man living for another. Even the ANBU, who was hiding in the Hokage's office as the third's guard, a man who had learned for years to restrain his emotions, had his eyes pop out of his head from the statements of the little lousy scab Naruto Uzumaki. This boy always had a mind of his own, talked to himself, looked intently into the eyes and smiled softly, understandingly, even a little slyly, like an old man looking at a child. Like a man of rich experience to an unreasonable youth. It was freezing, but still, this was imagination. The ANBU stated fatigue and simply a game of the boy. He was strange. But he was never loud and demanding. But today, Kakashi carried his burden on his back to the Hokage to take up the mission again. Maybe it was something to do with the Yamanaka greenhouses. He had heard that they were expanding their flower beds, and shinobi flower growers couldn't keep an eye on other plants. Sakura was trying to get Sasuke's attention, and Naruto was silently walking next to him, staring ahead without seeing. Everything was so familiar and usual that Hatake allowed himself to relax and delve into the intricacies of the plot of the book of adult content. The Jonin was giggling, the Kunoichi and the descendant of the great clan were mentally fighting, and the son of the fourth was smiling even more slyly. Already standing in front of the third's table, and listening to what the new simple mission consisted of, Naruto, unexpectedly for everyone, loudly expressed indignation for the first time. "Old Hokage, all we've been doing for weeks now is catching cats, scrubbing floors, and pulling weeds. And we're shinobi!" Here, he pointed to his forehead protector, as if Sarutobi simply didn't know that they were already genin. "I protest. I don't intend to do this nonsense anymore." For the first time, Anbu felt his eyes pop out of his head just from the screaming of some boy. The third, most likely due to his age, was not able to hide his emotions so well, let alone children, when even Kakashi, the great copy shinobi, had his only visible eye almost falling out of its socket. And Uzumaki, this abscess on Konoha's body, simply stood aside and pretended to be a ficus. Sasuke was even grateful to Naruto, because he himself was afraid of putting himself in an unfavorable light in front of the ruling hand of the village of assassins. And when Hiruzen agreed to give a bigger mission, he was completely euphoric. And then the door swung open, the customer entered the office, an old man sipping sake for no particular reason. And everything would have been calm if Uchiha had not seen his teammate out of the corner of his eye. Sasuke turned his head towards Naruto, frowned. Uzumaki was clearly interested for the first time. A man anticipating some grand event. And Uchiha did not like this. And for good reason. They discussed the details, agreed on the time of departure, and went their separate ways. Sasuke could not find any peace. If Naruto was interested, then one could even expect the abyss of hell to be unleashed with a subsequent invitation to the Uzumaki's hellish throne. And while packing his things, Uchiha was simultaneously thinking about what else he needed to take. Unpredictability in everything is Naruto's credo. And accordingly his sudden impulses could greatly affect the mission. The lot of the only responsible person on the team is hard. Little by little, everyone gathered at the gate and went outside Konoha, looking over their shoulders at the stone sculptures of the Kage's faces as they left. And all this time, Uzumaki kept his eyes on Tazuna, making him cringe under the sight of his bright blue eyes. The reason for the increased attention to the modest person of the bridge builder from a small country began to be revealed with the attack on the Mist Shinobi team. At that moment, everyone was busy rescuing the engineer and did not notice at all that one genin was slacking off, lazily dodging stray and not so stray shurikens and kunai. Having fought off the foreign shinobi, Team Number 7 and Tazuna moved on, already silently and less optimistically. "Tazuna-san, those shinobi attacked you," Kakashi began after much thought, carefully and extremely politely, holding back his anger at the setup. "Why do they want to kill you?" But Uzumaki, who had climbed up a tree for a short rest, did not give the bridge builder a chance to answer. The future is not always better than the present. Problems are appearing now, but not tomorrow. "What are you talking about, little bug?" Tazuna frowned. He hadn't liked the boy with the intense gaze from the start. "You have offended time. Troubles cannot be avoided, and there is nowhere to put them, and no way to hide." Naruto was lying on a thick branch, swinging his leg in the air, not even looking at his interlocutor. However, he did not need to. Everyone was following the conversation with interest, waiting for an explanation from the bridge builder, but he only waved his hand and took a sip of sake. It is not right to indulge all sorts of boys in their nonsense. After the crossing, the genin team with the jounin and their client came out onto the misty shores of the Land of Waves, a small poor country under the rule of Gato. And everything was calm until Uzumaki climbed into the bushes, muttering something under his breath. And he came out with a white rabbit. Sakura even felt déjà vu. In one of the fairy tales that her mother told her at night, there was both an oddball and a rabbit. The similarity of the characters in the book to her teammate and the little rabbit made Haruno laugh, giggling into her fist. And Naruto, all in leaves and twigs, squeezed the animal, looking strangely at Kakashi. A snow-white hare in spring? It was obviously bred in captivity. For the substitution technique. And the enemy is already here. And then Uzumaki fell to the ground. He beat Kakashi's scream to the punch. Get down! A giant sword flew out of the tree crown like a jack-in-the-box, spinning like a mill blade. It was only 30 centimeters from the heads of the genin and the customer, who had successfully fallen to the ground, and Sakura clearly felt sick at the prospect of being passed over. The sword pierced the tree trunk, and the demon of the mist, Momochi Zabuza, landed on it, as if on a pedestal. You! Uzumaki, you're scaring me, Haruno squeezed out quietly. Naruto looked at the renegade with a fanatical or near-fanatical gleam in his eyes. It seemed he wasn't even breathing. And his smile grew wider. Well, has the missing genin of the mist, Momochi Zabuza-kun, really come to visit us? Hatake whistled, thinking over a plan of action. 3 weak genin and old men are not the best support team. Take them away from the children and the customer, use the Sharingan, ignoring the usage limit, psychologically crush them. Maybe they will be able to cast a genjutsu. The main thing is to wear them out. But things don't always go according to plan. Life can also throw curveballs, and Kakashi knew that better than most. However, he didn't expect this. Hello? Naruto perked up, skipped over the distance to Zabuza and bowed slightly. This is your rabbit. You like snow, right? It can kill and warm your heart. But in reality, it's not that strong. Right. It melts easily. Naruto was unusually active. It was terribly frightening, considering who he was having a nice conversation with. Kakashi tried to grab the boy by the sleeve, but he easily slipped away, looked reproachfully, and continued talking to the killer, who had gone silent from such natural phenomena. You're a smart guy. The troublemakers are afraid of you, but everyone loves to set you up. But you know that. Zabuza listened to some snotty genin not because of shock or enlightenment of mind. No, these speeches amused him. The boy was not afraid. He spoke not to maintain his reputation with the missing nin, without any pathos and showiness. He just spoke. Clearly blissful. And he thought that there were no such people in Konoha. They should have used the boy's defects in the right direction, destroyed his emotions, made a real killing machine out of him. Without breaks. From such strange ones, they turn out to be unusually wonderful. But you are not. They couldn't make one out of you, Uzumaki chuckled into his sleeve. He became gloomy. The devil will cry when the last clean snow turns into dirty water. But Naruto's gloom didn't last long. A smile from ear to ear appeared almost instantly. Zabuza gritted his teeth. The boy was unbearable. The noob nin switched his attention to the copy nin, as if nothing had happened, and continued the interrupted conversation. Sharingan Kakashi. Sorry, copycat, but the old man will be mine. The genin were driven off the battlefield. As was Tazuna, who was pleased with this fact, and the 2 shinobi began to fight for the old man. Uzumaki calmly sprawled under a tree, closing his eyes. Was he really sleeping? Sasuke frowned and snorted, but the unbearable incompetent did nothing. The battle was going on right now. Naruto spoke up. They are not afraid of the end of life at all. One offends time, and does not know when time will end. The other is a moment. No future thoughts, no past attachments. Sasuke shrugged nervously, winced, turning to face the enemy. The situation was abysmal. Kakashi was already trapped. What could weak, inexperienced genin do against a seasoned killer? It seemed the best way out was to surrender. They could try to hide, but it was not a fact that Zabuza would not kill their sensei and give chase during that time. Besides, the old man would not be able to keep up with yesterday's academy graduates. After thinking logically, Sasuke came to the conclusion that it was useless to try and protect the customer. But he forgot about the fool Naruto. And in vain. Let the teacher out, please. Momochi did not expect such twists and turns of fate. Years of endurance training worked wonders. Not only did he not flinch from the unexpected person appearing behind him, but he also threw a dozen shurikens at the impudent boy. What is he doing? Sakura suddenly said loudly, watching this scene in shock. And just as the shurikens seemed to have reached their target, Uzumaki disappeared. As if he had dissolved into thin air. How did he learn to do this? Haruno was no longer surprised by Naruto's sudden appearance behind her. She turned her head slightly in his direction and commanded in a deliberately harsh tone. If you can, help Kakashi-sensei. She had no doubt that he could do it. Uzumaki already seemed like a fairy tale character. He had inexplicable strength, he was strange, and it seemed like he would never die. Naruto smiled widely, closed his eyes, ruffled his hair on the back of his head, and nodded slightly. And Sakura felt a weight lifted from her soul. They would manage. If he didn't say anything, it meant everything would be fine. He whispered to Sasuke, and during the conversation Uchiha looked askance at his comrade incredulously, measured the distance from the Avenger to the water's edge and steps, stood in the middle, with all imperturbability raised his nose to the sky, smiling again. Only not usually softly, but slyly, even nastily. He abruptly lowered his head, already drilling Momochi with a glance from under his brows. Zabuza grinned, casually beckoning the obnoxious boy to him. And Kakashi was quietly horrified. He tried to prevent the coming meat grinder, but, obviously, to no avail. His students were too willful, not yet broken by the realities of life, with childish stubbornness following their morals and an incomparably huge sense of justice. They did not even think about the worst consequences. It was so nice to be a child. Their worldview clouds their vision, refracting the picture of the world according to their own laws and orders. And it tends to change from any little thing. Not like adults. And now these children were trying to do the impossible. What always surprised Kakashi was that it was a child who could turn the world upside down, starting from a simple, I want. For them, there is no, I can't. It's forbidden. They are not faced with a strict, must. But that's for now. Until they take on more complex tasks. But now, nothing is impossible for them. True, they don't know yet that they change the world with every word, movement, small decision. Children are more powerful than established adults. All doors are open to them, they are free to choose their own path in the fog. To turn or to push through. All that is needed is persistence. And now 3 children could very well perform a miracle. Or Kakashi simply convinced himself of it. Sasuke glanced at Uzumaki's back once more, shrugged and twirled the shuriken in Fuma's hand, fixing the folding blades at right angles in one motion. He chuckled as usual and threw it at Zabuza. Of course, the failure of such an attack would have been striking like a poisonous green spot on a black background. If there hadn't been one thing. Momochi had lost his vigilance and underestimated the children's cunning. And he didn't notice the shuriken, hidden in the shadows, right away. But when he wanted to deflect it, the kunai blade collided with an obstacle. The shuriken disappeared in smoke, its place taken by that same annoying blonde child. He defended himself with a kunai, smiled amiably, and pointed with his eyes at his free hand. The senbons, clutched in his fingers, flashed dangerously, clearly smeared with something. Damn boy! The missing nin hissed, recognizing the need to interrupt the prison technique. The other hand painfully squeezed the little bastard's wrist. The demon of the mist grinned bloodthirstily. The crack of breaking bones was heard. But to Zabuza's amazement, the boy did not even wince. Only the smile was replaced by a slight incomprehension. He turned over in the air, preparing his leg for a blow, but Momochi let him go. Naruto landed on the shore, not seeing the continuation of the fight between the 2 jounin, looking at his broken wrist with a fair amount of surprise. And, Naruto, are you in pain? Sakura quickly jumped up, instantly assessing the situation. But Uzumaki just looked at his hand. Haruno shook his shoulder, and only then Naruto spoke up. Does it hurt? As if not knowing the meaning of this word, baffling the pink-haired excellent student. Your wrist. Sakura patiently pointed to the swollen area. Is broken. Really? The boy frowned slightly, as if trying to understand what they were telling him. Okay, Kakashi-sensei will figure it out. Haruno exhaled, shook her head and fluttered to Tazuna, to protect her. Naruto looked at the girl with bewilderment, turned his gaze to his now healthy wrist, twirled his hand and smiled softly at his thoughts, dreamily raising his gaze to the clouds. Soon it would snow. And he loved it. Of course, he had only seen it in books, but that didn't stop him. And then a lot of people would die. Their blood would be carried away by the current, their bodies would be buried in a mass grave, piled up like cattle, but 2 would have their own places. And sometimes that was enough. My gratitude. I have been waiting for a chance to kill Zabuza for a long time. Momochi had fallen dead with 2 senbon in his neck minutes earlier. Kakashi had not found a pulse. The unknown masked shinobi, a hunter of the Nukenin of the Mist, looked down on the Genin and Jounin of the Leaf, completely ignoring the bridge builder from the Land of Waves. The surprise of this meeting hung in the air. Some hit it better, some worse, but Naruto smiled. Before him appeared a man who lived for another. And so, on the shore of the lake, the people of the time and one special one gathered. Uzumaki almost laughed, cheerfully, not at all in keeping with the mood of those around him, seeing such different, but similar residents of different countries. And what changes this meeting brings? Idiot, stop grinning like that, you're scaring Sakura. But it's fun! When time itself doesn't know what's next. I know what's next. If you don't stop staring at the sky, the funeral will be very soon. How did you find out? The blue green-eyed cats told you? Idiot. Underscore 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 underscore. No need to correct, everything is correct. Underscore 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 underscore. Well, in general, I will give answers to some questions later, almost at the end. You just have to recognize them. Although I don't like little children, I admit that they have many more paths ahead of them. They don't have, if only if, which some will agree, are completely different things. I already realize that although there are tons of opportunities, there is no strength. Take guitar lessons? And who will cram English? Read interesting books for 5 hours a day? Yeah, right. Medicine is waiting. Finish the web design manual and fulfill an old dream? Leave me, old woman, I'm dying. Traveling around the country? Studying, money, no license, girlfriend, no means of protection, etc. Not so much excuses as logical thinking and analysis of the current situation. It's easier for children, but also more dangerous. School and my parents' indifference raised me to be a weak-willed slacker with an aversion to classical Russian literature and any forced labor in general. Of course, it's my fault. But who influences the mind of a small child? Having felt the joy of a semblance of rebellion a couple of times, preparing in the morning before school, skipping school during the day, it's impossible to stop. But provide your child with normal leisure time, don't deprive him of attention, encourage successes and explain the consequences of laziness and sudden attacks of inflammation of cunning, and he will be able to move mountains. Children are like that. They put all their efforts into something. They are stubborn, they get their way. How can I return such a character? Ahem. Yeah, I need to start a blog again. Does anyone know a better site? Other than LJ, Diary, Live Internet. Thanks for reading. P.S. Yes, I'm almost asleep. In my headphones, Elvis is replaced by Matchbox 20, smoothly switching to blues. The Christmas tree nearby is sparkling with all the colors. The coffee has long since run out, and the chills after a long walk along the frozen street have finally passed. My evenings are so vanilla. It's a pity that dried striped fish, such a fish, remind us of their existence only with stubs of tails. For those who want something summery, fun, cute and about the sea, I recommend the anime Suratama. The Joys of Fishing. At least I watched it in one go and without face bombs, which is already rare. It's a shame that there are only 6 fics in the fandom, and only one is not yaoi. I understand everything, as many as 4 guys as the main characters, but this story is about friendship. PPS http://ficbook.net/readfic/160497 for my new FIC. About Naruto the Ghost, who remembers only his name. Neither his life before death, nor actually hers. Some semblance of a detective story. I advise you to take a look. Also mysticism. And although the theme is hackneyed, I think there is a twist. Note 7. Naruto is an idiot, added by Sasuke. Kakashi lazily watched as the students tried to climb the tree trunk without hands. Quite a funny show. But Sakura quickly figured out what was going on. She quickly ran up and sat down on a branch, looking down with a bit of pride. Sasuke was only trying. His chakra control was poor, and his smugness was through the roof. Hatake didn't even consider the third genin as an actor in this show. Tell Naruto to work, he would literally disappear, dissolve, and then turn up in the most unexpected place. "Stop being lazy!" Uchiha Uzumaki shouted, making a mark on the trunk. Only a centimeter higher than the previous one. "Don't bloody eyes feed on feelings?" It sounded almost in the ringing silence. A whisper behind his back. Sasuke turned around abruptly, but Naruto was standing next to Kakashi. He scratched the back of his head, smiling stupidly. Having overcome the unpleasant sensation under his shoulder blade, the Uchiha climbed the tree again. But the result was already worse. Uzumaki had completely ruined the mood. Sasuke, irritated, finally went berserk when Kakashi started to urge him on. He didn't like to retreat, and when the team headed back to the bridge builder's house, the genius stayed behind. In the twilight, the forest seemed even more frightening, and his loneliness even stronger. The moon dimly illuminated the treetops, not allowing darkness to completely take over the world at this hour. The Uchiha sat down heavily on the grass, clutching the kunai until his knuckles turned white. How would he take revenge on Itachi if he was so weak? There was a rustling sound in the bushes. For just a moment, something gray and ugly peered out from the foliage. A rat. It stared with its empty eye sockets at the only person in the forest, then disappeared. Now Sasuke felt uneasy. The crackling of broken branches distracted him from his thoughts. Sharply turning around, preparing to pounce on the stranger, the Uchiha saw only Naruto. He smiled and waved his hand. And then steel flashed. It was very rare for Uzumaki to be armed. He even shied away his time in the academy. Sasuke stood up, looking suspiciously at his comrade, but he nodded at the tree. "Want to study?" Uchiha watched his comrade with distrust. He approached the tree growing next to the one that Sasuke had been tormenting for hours, smiled softly, kindly. "What this time?" The genius of the dead clan was not particularly eager to be alone with Naruto, the strangest boy in Konoha, but this guy did not want to leave. Uchiha stood up and picked up the kunai, and when he straightened up, the clearing was empty. A nervous lump stuck in his throat, goosebumps ran between his shoulder blades along his spine. Did I really imagine it? "It's time to sleep," Uchiha chuckled, trying to be brave. He was not afraid of ghosts, but now his chest tightened. Suddenly, a kunai pierced the ground at Sasuke's feet. The boy stepped back and raised his head sharply. Naruto was lying on the upper branches, lazily swinging his leg. The Uchiha bared his teeth and ran up. He wouldn't lose to the upstart. The floorboards creaked too loudly, the genin grimaced. Fatigue prevented him from using his shinobi skills. His silent gait transformed into waddling over the threshold, bumping into everything that could make noise. Having made his way into the room allocated to them by the bridge builder, Sasuke froze in amazement. Naruto was sleeping peacefully. And it seemed like he was dragging behind. Mentally recalling all the curses, the Uchiha sat down on his tatame. "Hate is bad food for your eyes," they whispered in the darkness. Sasuke turned around and met Naruto's doll-like, completely unseeing gaze. Trying to stop shaking, the boy covered his head with the blanket. The painful images from Itachi's illusion haunted him, filled with new colors. The memories of recent days became covered with cracks. How to forget about hatred? How to let go of everything that happened to him? It was impossible, unrealistic. "Geniuses are prone to mistakes," Naruto countered. "To forget about revenge is to lose yourself. To destroy, to trample into the dirt everything that was put into the concept of family. He is your family too. He's a murderer. A traitor who can't be forgiven. Everyone would be better off if he died. Even you? Especially for me." "What nonsense, heh?" Stupid Sasuke," Naruto laughed. "It's not the past that's got hold of you, you're getting hold of it." Losing consciousness from Zabuza's henchman Senban, Sasuke remembered this conversation. Maybe everything really was wrong. A mistake. But finding another purpose in life is not so easy. And his parents, they are gone. Because of Itachi. The hated Itachi. Bye-bye. Naruto materialized next to the masked guy, knocked out the shinobi with the unique element of ice with one movement, and landed next to Sasuke to the sound of broken mirrors. The world has turned upside down. What? Sasuke asked with the last of his strength. You look like a hedgehog. Naruto noted without listening. Jerk. Commentary on Note 7, Naruto is a jerk, added by Sasuke. A transitional chapter, things will get much easier from here on out, I promise. Note 8, Naruto as a ghost, edited by Haku, Commentary on Note 8, Naruto as a ghost, edited by Haku. Promised? Fulfilled, laughing face. Enjoy 3. Sakura, standing next to the old bridge builder, peered into the fog, hoping to see Sasuke alive and well. She was nervous, tugging at her pink locks and stamping her foot from excitement and impatience. The old man was silent, his head bowed in understanding. But the sound of broken ice interrupted everything. A rumble passed through the bridge. Even the fog could not hide the consequences of Naruto's appearance. He stood in the middle of the fragments. Sasuke was half lying behind him, and Haku was trying to get up under his feet. He thinks you're too kind, Naruto smiled, walked over the shards of mirrors, stopped and inhaled the frosty air. Weapons, weapons, living weapons. But how so? You're a human. Shinobi, the mask crumbled, hair tangled. Blood ran down the chin. Shinobi is a weapon. How can I sharpen you? Do I need to throw you at my enemies? You're funny. Haku cleared his throat and smiled. If Zabuza-san wishes, I'll die. And will he die if you wish? The fog around him seemed to have grown even thicker, and the frost surrounded him from all sides. The boy's dark blue eyes, not blue as before, stared blankly at Haku. If it weren't for the years of training, hundreds of murders, and the pain in his head, he would have felt uneasy. As if Naruto held the world in the palm of his hand. As if he wanted, he could cover it with his other hand. As if he could wipe anyone off the face of the earth at any moment. But Haku knew. He couldn't do that. Psychological pressure, the effect, the subconscious control of other people's emotions. But was it possible at that age? Haku didn't know. Either the boy was a genius, or he was truly crazy. Don't you dare say such things about Zabuza-san. Will he die if you wish? Such a difficult question, a hated question. A question that is not worth paying attention to, but somehow ended up under the spotlight. Haku would like Naruto to disappear, to evaporate with the fog, and his soft smile to be an illusion. It would be better that way, calmer, warmer in the soul. There would be no soul-torturing questions, piercing gaze and condescension in every feature. Disappear, Naruto. Just disappear. And he disappeared. Like everything around him, like the fog and the blood on his chin. The last piece of the mask fell onto his open palms, scarred by long training. The wind ruffled his tangled hair. Haku, as if hypnotized, looked ahead, where the pink-haired girl remained with the old man. She was hugging the Uchiha and crying with happiness. And this pierced his soul. Where is Zabuza-san? The wind brought with it an indistinct whisper, as if it ran a palm over Haku's head, stroked his cut cheek. The copy ninja joined the trio, bruised but happy. And there, in the distance, lay a body in a pool of blood. The heart skipped a beat, the lungs filled with lead. Zabuza-san! The scream sounded as if from under the thickness of water. Stunned, scared, like a little boy, like the orphan he used to be, Haku ran, leaving behind shards of ice mirrors, forgetting about the soft smile and condescending look. It didn't matter anymore. These were trifles, nothing. A couple of meters from the body, Haku fell, but continued crawling towards Zabuza. With trembling hands he checked his pulse. Thread-like, very weak. And what are you going to do? The calm, damn calm voice of the boy behind him. Haku wanted to paint the kunai red for the first time. I will save Zabuza-san, he answered confidently, without looking at Naruto. Then why are you staring? You can interfere. Naruto laughed. Really? Here they are, yes. And he pointed to the crowd of mercenaries that Gato had brought with him. 5 minutes. That's how long it took to kill a traitorous drug dealer and his loyal dogs. A powerful ice technique, madness replacing grief, and Haku is once again kneeling before the only person dear to him. Why are you crying? A voice unknown whose cut through the thickness of the water. Haku didn't even think of wiping away the tears mixed with someone else's blood. Stop it. But Haku couldn't. There was a rustling sound from the side, and a shadow slipped behind him. Suddenly, Zabuza's hand yanked the boy's body towards itself, and Haku found himself on the cold ground. Hot drops slid down his cheek. Blood. The stern gaze of familiar eyes and the long sword sticking out of Zabuza's chest. Everything around him went blurry. Hopelessness paralyzed him, grabbed him by the throat, strangled him like a helpless kitten. He committed suicide for you. Shut up, shut up, shut up. For the love of all the gods, shut up. Don't get lost, living weapon. Or are you still a man? Haku lay for a long time on the bridge in a pool of someone else's blood next to the body of the person dearest to him. The rain, as uncontrollable as Zabuza, poured for the rest of the day. Weapon, man, beast, what difference did it make now? But something held him back. Maybe a condescending look and a soft smile? This crazy boy who knew everything and even more. His team who did not understand all the danger, positive kids without a bloody trail behind them. They were so independent, irrepressible. Happy. Haku wanted to be like that, but he could not. He was held back by the pain of the past and affection for Zabuza. But everything was dead long ago. Rotted, rusted, crumbled to dust and scattered throughout the desert of the soul. So run, you stupid fool, you'll still have time. Time won't hurt you anymore. Haku grinned, giggled, bit his lip and laughed at the top of his lungs. His nerves were shot to hell. The pain he had long suppressed burst out of his body along with a barking, hoarse laugh. The uncontrollable force of the elements froze the blood and water around him, and Haku, lying in the middle, rolled over onto his back, turning his face to the rain. This was insane, this was stupid. This was betrayal. But for some reason, for the first time, he wanted to live for himself. For Zabuza, for his mother. Not as someone's weapon, but as an ordinary person. Naruto sneezed and looked sideways in surprise. Something went wrong. What? Sakura looked out of the tent. Did you say something? The boy, who wanted to say something, sneezed again. Oh my god, have you caught a cold? That's all we need. The girl rummaged around in her bag, while Uchiha looked skeptically at his teammate. Do crazy people get sick? A cold? It's just a sneeze. Nonsense? No, stupid Sasuke, sneezing. When they're bored, they make us sneeze and cough. Naruto explained happily, and Sasuke concluded that one should act much more simply with crazy people, agree and not argue. Have you heard of Uzumaki? Who is this? One crazy guy. Crazy? What do you mean? You don't know? He's strange and sometimes says creepy things. Yes. My mother forbids me to even go near him. Wait. What do you mean, strange? Crazy? Yeah. Why isn't he being treated? Why is he walking freely? They say that even the Hokage is afraid of him. Don't talk nonsense. The Hokage isn't afraid of anything. And him, yes. Is it really that weird? Yes. The only thing scarier than that is salty cookies. And says strange and creepy things? Is he kidding? No, he's serious. Check it yourself. No, you can't. My parents will get angry. They will. And he will also eat you. He's not a Barabashka to eat. But adults say he's a monster. Creepy, crazy, and also a monster. Haha. A horror story about a strange and very scary Naruto Uzumaki was circulating among children all over Konoha, who, in general, had nothing to be afraid of. But you know children? And there is no horror story more terrifying and strange than the fable about crazy Naruto, who, however, really seemed to be not from this reality. Perhaps this is the work of the fox, who, due to the weakness of the seal, took to causing nightmares to the Jinchuriki, or maybe this is the consequences of meeting Shinigami, who clearly does not have the appearance of kind Uncle Moidader, but undoubtedly, also professionally breaks the fragile child's psyche. But one way or another, the unfortunate Uzumaki sees what is not there. Mutters strange things under his breath and says illogical, and sometimes chilling things. And there would be no complaints about the boy, but he grows up in Konoha, beloved by all of us, where the method of treating the affect of drinking tea with the god of death was not invented, and their own crazy people were not sent abroad to straighten out their brains. And this did not affect the performance of military duty, so, after hesitating, and listening to the advice of elders in Danzo, including, having received an overdose of caffeine and nicotine, Sarutobi Hiruzen gave the go-ahead for Naruto's crusade to the academy. Naruto, what is the difference between a chunin and a jonin? How are a kunai and a sloth similar? Of course, Uzumaki's head was a mess of his fantasies, scraps of Shinigami memory and Kyuubi knowledge, and his parents, and it was so rich that it was impossible to fish out anything useful from all this, and new knowledge evaporated without ever reaching the brain. And it's not about stupidity. No, Naruto is a smart boy in general, but, as has been said a million times, strange. Naturally, he did not shine in his studies, he never made friends, but he gave birth to a whole bunch of rumors from the axiom, Naruto is strange, to such insanity as the rumor that this same blonde eats babies for dinner. Children. But Naruto is really sympathetic and honest. True, his reputation and the strength of the local grannies, who are clearly suitable for wrestlers, do not allow him to demonstrate good character traits. But Iruka-sensei, after bickering with the third and completely ignoring Uzumaki, saw a normal child in the latter and began to help and support him. Well, Naruto, the exam involves creating clones. Why are you silent? Show your skills. And create similar clones? Living as if in his own world, our blonde could not help but push away his peers, who, on the one hand, wanted to get to know him, but on the other, were afraid of the monster. It was for this reason that no one was going to pat the boy on the shoulder or calm him down when Uzumaki did not receive a protector. Although Naruto himself did not experience much grief, either not understanding what had happened, or showing miracles of optimism, or knowing what would happen in the future. It was not for nothing that he saw Shinigami, so to speak, practically the god of time, in reality. But it is difficult to say for sure. Why are you smiling like that? Aren't you worried about failing your exam? I'm sorry, I couldn't help you anyway. This is all for you, not because I'm such a bad teacher. I'm not worried. Iruka-sensei, because the game will start soon. What game? Play tag. I'll be the white rabbit. But despite everything, somehow, Uzumaki managed to get out of the mess with the scroll. As he said, it was a game of catch-up. And once again Iruka-sensei shook his head, surprised and even a little afraid of Naruto's ability to predict events. Intuition, apparently, is highly developed. And the blonde managed to learn the Class B technique, Shadow Clone, in such a short time. Minato's genes? Quite possible. Team number 7. Uzumaki Naruto, Haruno Sakura and Uchiha Sasuke. Why am I on a team with Naruto? At least with Sasuke-kun. Don't shout. Are you telling me what to do? No, you're just scaring them. Whom? There. There's no one there. Stop lying. There are. You just don't see them. But they are there. You're strange. By the way, everyone breathed a sigh of relief when they found out that Uzumaki was not on their team. Sakura was afraid of Naruto, but she quickly restored her stamina just by thinking about the fact that she and Sasuke-kun were on the same team. And Uchiha? He didn't care about his comrades, and in general he would have preferred to work alone, without ballast. In addition, it was a shock to everyone that the local idiot suddenly became a shinobi, even though he failed the exam miserably. Interesting, isn't it? But nevertheless, the forehead protector adorns the blonde, who is currently muttering something under his breath, as always. And the audience was becoming more and more deserted, as the newly minted genin almost galloped out of the boring walls of the academy. But someone will have to return to the textbooks again when his former classmates will kill and try not to become an anatomy manual. Anyone would choose the path of a shinobi, right? So, only Team 7 remains, still waiting for their sensei, who, in fact, can't tear himself away from reading a brand new Arrow novel by one of the Sannin. Fortunately, not Orochimaru, although his tomes would become popular in certain circles and has no intention of coming on time. All the teams have already left. Sakura grumbled quietly, glancing at her watch every now and then. Why is only our sensei late? Catching Uzumaki's heavy gaze, Haruno frowned questioningly. Well, she didn't like Naruto, she didn't like him. If you look at your watch too often, you'll stop time forever, the blonde nodded to himself. Cover it with a bandage, and time will go faster, it won't be offended by your intent gaze. What? Was all the girl could say before Naruto went back into himself. He's weird, he's definitely nuts, Haruno decided, looking askance at the source of all the horror stories. Why am I on his team? I'd agree to be with anyone, but not Naruto. It's good that Sasuke-kun is here. With a quiet creak, the future tumbled into the auditorium, looking around with a nonchalant expression and saying, "Oh, this is Team 7? Am I right? Naruto and them." The weather was pleasant, with clouds and stuffiness, foreshadowing a thunderstorm with downpour and lightning, as it should be. I just wanted to lie on the grass and sip juice, but no, meeting the sensei. Although Kakashi would have preferred to sit in the shade, sip something a little stronger, and enjoy the wonderful intrigues of his fellow countrymen's brand new erotic novel. But what can you do if the third himself sat some youngsters on the Jounin's hump? It seems that this time he is forced to work by the last of the Uchiha of Konoha, the best student of the academy, and a hooligan. And the latter is the son of Minato-sensei. Hatake had never even encountered the restless bandit before. Perhaps he hid so well, but they say that the boy is strange. And Sarutobi Hiruzen only shows off his false teeth when it comes to finding out the reasons for the boy's oddities, and in general the soundness of the idea of introducing Naruto to the work of a shinobi. Where is the reason? Where is the common sense? But yes, where is